She was just a waitress, until a billionaire saw her necklace and froze. The moment their eyes locked, a hidden past was revealed, one that would change both their lives forever. But could a simple piece of jewelry truly unravel a mystery that had been buried for decades? Jasmine never imagined that the necklace she had worn every day since childhood would catch the eye of someone like Margaret Lancaster, one of the wealthiest women in New Orleans. But when Margaret's gaze fixed on it, while a chill ran through the air, Margaret's world had just collided with Jasmine's in a way neither of them could have predicted. As their fates intertwined, one question remained. What was the truth behind the necklace that could rewrite both their histories? Jasmine Brown wiped the sweat off her brow as she balanced the tray of drinks and appetizers, maneuvering between the crowded tables of the bustling Bayou Bistro in New Orleans. The restaurant was packed, as its dimly lit interior echoing with the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft jazz playing in the background. Jasmine was used to the chaos. After all, she had been working here for the past 6 months, saving every penny to pay for nursing school. She'd come a long way from the foster homes she grew up in, but every day felt like a fight for something more, something better. As she approached table 5, she saw a familiar face among the diners, a woman in her early 70s, her silver hair styled perfectly under a wide-brimmed hat, her designer suit impeccable. Margaret Lancaster, one of the wealthiest women in New Orleans, sat surrounded by a group of men in expensive suits. Her presence alone commanded attention. No one in the restaurant seemed to notice Jasmine's nervousness. No one except Margaret, who seemed to be studying her. Jasmine smiled and set the drinks down in front of the table. As she reached for the last drink, she felt Margaret's eyes follow her, while not with the usual disinterest of rich patrons, but with something different, a cold recognition that sent a chill down her spine. Margaret's lips parted, but she didn't speak immediately. Instead, her gaze dropped to the silver pendant that hung around Jasmine's neck, the only thing of value she owned, a simple heart-shaped locket passed down to her from a woman she never knew. The air in the restaurant seemed to shift as Margaret's eyes widened in shock, yet her hand trembled slightly as she reached up to clutch her chest. Her voice cracked as she whispered, almost to herself, "That necklace. It's hers. It can't be." Jasmine froze, the tray now forgotten in her hands. She looked at Margaret, confused, but the older woman didn't seem to see her. Her face drained of color, her focus solely on the pendant around Jasmine's neck. It wasn't just any necklace. It was a locket, old and simple, but it had a deep significance for Jasmine. Thus, it was the only connection she had to a past she couldn't remember. Her heart raced as Margaret's stare intensified. "Ma'am?" Jasmine asked softly, feeling her pulse quicken. But Margaret didn't respond right away. The other diners at nearby tables noticed the sudden tension in the room. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Margaret Lancaster, a woman known for her composure, her ice-cold demeanor, and her ability to manipulate business deals with ruthless precision, was visibly shaken. "Please," Margaret whispered, her voice barely audible. "Where did you get that necklace? Please tell me." Jasmine's mind raced, her stomach knotting in confusion. "Ma'am, She didn't know how to answer. The necklace? It had been with her since she was an infant. A tiny thing, not even worth more than a few bucks. But it was the only thing she had left from her unknown family. She had never once considered the possibility that someone would recognize it, let alone someone like Margaret Lancaster. Jasmine opened her mouth to respond, but Margaret stood up abruptly, her chair scraping noisily against the polished floor. Margaret's eyes, wide with fear and disbelief, locked onto hers. "I have to speak with you," Margaret insisted, pushing past her companions and ignoring the concerned glances of the other patrons. "Alone. Now." The tension in the room was palpable as they walked toward the back office, with Margaret leading the way with an urgency that caught Jasmine off guard. Her manager, Robert, appeared from behind the bar, his expression tight with concern. He attempted to interject, but Margaret waved him off dismissively, her eyes not leaving Jasmine for a second. The walk through the restaurant felt like an eternity. Jasmine's heart pounded in her chest, her thoughts scattered. What was happening? Why did Margaret care so much about a simple necklace? Was it just a coincidence? Or was there something more? Once they were in the back office, Margaret closed the door behind them, the room now echoing with the sound of their breathing. Margaret's face was pale, her hands trembling as she pulled out her phone and began scrolling through her photos. Jasmine watched her, too stunned to speak, but then Margaret found what she was looking for and held the phone up to Jasmine's face. The photo was of a woman, a younger version of Margaret herself, standing with a hand resting on her pregnant belly. She had dark hair, laughing at something off camera, but what struck Jasmine the most was the necklace, the very same heart-shaped locket hanging around the woman's neck. "She was my daughter," Margaret said, her voice breaking. "Her name was Caroline. This was her necklace." Margaret's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away, her gaze never wavering from Jasmine's face. "She died 27 years ago, giving birth. But I never got to hold her baby. I never got to say goodbye." Jasmine stood motionless, her heart hammering in her chest. The room felt like it was closing in on her. She couldn't speak. What was she hearing? Could it be true? Was she really the daughter of this woman's lost child? Could she really be connected to the Lancaster family? Jasmine felt her knees weaken, the room tilting as the weight of the revelation hit her. She sank into the chair behind her, while trying to make sense of the impossible. This was crazy. It couldn't be real. She was just a waitress, a nobody with no family. There had to be a mistake. Margaret stepped closer, her voice soft but insistent. "Please, Jasmine. I need to know. You're my granddaughter, aren't you?" Jasmine felt tears welling in her eyes. She couldn't breathe. She had spent her entire life feeling lost, like something was missing, like there was a piece of her life that had been stolen. But this was too much. Could Margaret really be her grandmother? Could this woman, with all her wealth and power, truly be connected to her in some way? The room was silent, except for the faint sound of their breathing. Jasmine's thoughts swirled around her, her mind struggling to process everything. She had been abandoned, found alone in a hospital bathroom as a baby. She had never known her parents, never known her family. She had lived her life in foster care, moving from one home to the next, always feeling like she didn't belong anywhere. But now, suddenly, Margaret Lancaster, a woman with more money and power than Jasmine had ever imagined, was telling her that they were family. Jasmine opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She had no idea what to say, how to react. She had spent her whole life surviving, trying to make something of herself, and now this, a new family, a billionaire grandmother? Was it even possible? But Margaret's voice cut through her thoughts once more, gentle but firm. "Jasmine, you're not just my family. You are my legacy, the person I've spent all these years searching for. You were lost to me, and now I need to know the truth." Jasmine's hands trembled as she reached for her locket, feeling the cold metal between her fingers. This small, simple thing, could it really hold the key to everything she had been searching for? Could it really lead her back to the family she never knew? As Margaret's eyes searched hers, waiting for a response, Jasmine felt her heart twist. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She wasn't just a lost soul. She was part of something much bigger, and this was only the beginning of a journey she never could have imagined. "Jasmine," Margaret's voice was barely above a whisper. She stepped closer, her eyes locked on the locket, her own hands trembling. "Please tell me, do you remember anything about your past?" Jasmine swallowed hard. the weight of the moment crushing down on her. She didn't know how to answer. The truth was, she had never remembered anything about her early years. All she had was the locket and the faint memories of being abandoned in a hospital bathroom. The rest was a blur of foster homes, names she couldn't recall, and faces that faded in and out of her life. I don't remember much, Jasmine stammered, feeling her chest tighten as her breath caught in her throat. Just that I was left there, in the bathroom. I had this with me when I was found. She tugged the locket off her neck and held it out to Margaret, her fingers shaking. This is all I have. Margaret's expression softened as she carefully took the locket from Jasmine's hands, her fingers brushing over the cool metal. Her eyes fluttered shut for a brief moment, as if the weight of the years had caught up with her. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with something Jasmine couldn't quite place: hope, grief, and a longing for something she had lost long ago. I never got to say goodbye to my daughter, Margaret whispered, her voice breaking slightly. Caroline was everything to me. She was my only child, and she gave me the greatest gift, a grandchild, someone I never got to know. But I've spent years searching for you, and now you're here. Jasmine felt her heart race, the words too much to process. How can this be? You're telling me I'm your granddaughter? Margaret nodded slowly, and the sadness in her eyes giving way to determination. Yes, Jasmine. You are Caroline's daughter, my grandchild. You've been lost to me for so long, but now I've found you. Jasmine sat back in the chair, the room spinning around her. She couldn't process it all at once. The woman before her, this powerful, poised woman who ran a cosmetics empire, was her grandmother. She had spent her whole life without family, without knowing where she came from. Yes, and now she had found a family she never knew existed. I don't know what to say, Jasmine whispered, her voice barely audible. Her mind was racing. The truth felt too surreal. She had always dreamed of finding her family, but now that it was happening, it didn't seem real. You don't have to say anything yet, Margaret said gently, her voice soothing. I know this is a lot to take in, but I've waited 27 years for this moment. I've searched for you, and I'm not going to let you go again. Jasmine shook her head, trying to clear the fog in her mind. But I don't belong here. I don't even know who I am. I was just a waitress in a small restaurant. How can I be part of your world? Margaret smiled faintly, her hand reaching out to touch Jasmine's. You've always belonged here, Jasmine. This world, this family, it's part of who you are. And now that I've found you, I'm going to help you see that. Well, I'm going to help you understand who you are, where you come from, and what you're meant to do. The words hung in the air, the gravity of Margaret's statement sinking in. For the first time in her life, Jasmine felt like she was standing on solid ground. She wasn't alone anymore. She had family. She had a future. And for the first time, she could see the possibility of something more than just surviving. Margaret stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Oh, this is only the beginning, Jasmine. The journey ahead will be difficult, but we'll face it together. Jasmine looked at her grandmother, still processing the whirlwind of emotions inside her. I don't know how to begin. I've spent my life trying to forget my past, trying to make a future for myself. Margaret turned back to her, her gaze firm but gentle. You don't have to forget your past, Jasmine. You can embrace it, and you can create the future you deserve. I'm here for you, but you don't have to do it alone anymore. A silence fell between them, but this time it wasn't awkward or uncomfortable. It was the silence of understanding, of two people finally connecting after years of separation. Finally, Jasmine nodded, a small, tentative smile forming on her lips. Okay, let's do this. Let's figure out who I am, together. Margaret smiled back, her face softening with pride. Together. As the days passed, Jasmine's world shifted in ways she could barely comprehend. And the restaurant felt like a distant memory, a part of her life she was slowly shedding like an old skin. Every time she looked in the mirror, it was as if a new version of herself was staring back, one with a history she never knew, a legacy she was now part of. Margaret had taken her to her mansion the next day, a sprawling estate in the Garden District of New Orleans, far from the cramped apartment Jasmine had shared with a couple of roommates. The moment they arrived, but Jasmine was struck by the grandeur of it all, the marble floors, the antique furniture, and the vast collection of art that lined the walls. It was a world that Jasmine had never imagined herself in, and it made her feel both awed and small at the same time. But Margaret had been nothing but kind, guiding her through every room, sharing stories of their family's past, and slowly unraveling the mysteries of Jasmine's lineage. They spent hours talking, with Margaret filling in the gaps of Jasmine's early life, how she had been born to Caroline Lancaster, her daughter, who had tragically died during childbirth. Margaret had never stopped searching for her grandchild, even after the adoption papers were finalized and the child was lost to the system. Jasmine's biological father was never part of the picture, and Caroline had never spoken about him, so the mystery of Jasmine's origins remained unsolved, until now. By the end of the week, now the shock had started to wear off, replaced by a deep, simmering curiosity. Who was she really? What was she supposed to do now that everything she knew had been turned upside down? There were moments when the weight of the revelation felt like too much to bear, and Jasmine found herself standing in the middle of Margaret's mansion, wondering if she truly belonged here. Could she really become part of this world, this family? Was it possible to embrace a new identity when she had spent her entire life trying to build her own path? On the morning of the third day, Margaret sat her down in the grand dining room, a large window overlooking the sprawling gardens. The sun streamed through, casting long shadows across the polished wood of the table. Margaret had asked for a formal meeting, and Jasmine wasn't sure what to expect. She'd already been told she was part of the family. But what did that really mean? "So, Jasmine," Margaret began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know this is all happening so fast, but I want you to understand something. I spent 27 years searching for you, and now that you're here, I need you to know that I'm not just offering you a place in this family for the sake of tradition or obligation. I want you here because you're part of me, part of Caroline. You're my granddaughter. And I will do whatever it takes to ensure you have every opportunity in this world." Jasmine looked at Margaret, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The sincerity in her grandmother's eyes was undeniable, but Jasmine still struggled with the enormity of the situation. "I don't know if I can just step into this life. I've spent so long on my own, making my own way. I'm not like the people you know. I don't belong in a place like this." Margaret shook her head, her expression softening. "Jasmine, you belong because of who you are, not because of what you have or what you don't. Your strength, your kindness, that's what makes you part of this family. Don't doubt that." Jasmine took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Margaret's words settle into her chest. She wanted to believe it. She wanted to believe that she could be part of this world, that she could be more than just a waitress with a forgotten past. But the fear of losing herself in the process held her back. "I don't know if I can just forget where I came from," Jasmine said quietly, looking out the window at the bright garden. "I don't want to lose who I am. I don't want to forget what I've been through." Margaret reached across the table, placing her hand gently over Jasmine's. "You don't have to forget, but you can choose to build a future where your past doesn't define you, where you don't have to carry the weight of all those years of uncertainty. You're more than what happened to you. You're more than where you came from. Jasmine looked down at their hands, her fingers resting against Margaret's. For the first time, she felt the possibility of something more, a life that wasn't defined by struggle or survival, but by choice, by belonging. She could feel the warmth of Margaret's words settling in her heart, and for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond the limitations she had placed on herself. The following days were a blur of changes, and Jasmine found herself in a whirlwind of family dinners, meetings with Margaret's associates, and even a few trips to the family business. Margaret's company, Lancaster Enterprises, was an empire, and Jasmine could see the legacy of hard work and determination in every corner of the business. She was introduced to lawyers, financial advisors, and executives who all seemed to look at her with curiosity, as if waiting for her to take her place in this world. It was overwhelming, but in a way that was both exciting and terrifying. One evening, after a particularly long day, Jasmine found herself sitting alone on the balcony of Margaret's mansion, staring out at the city skyline. The lights of New Orleans glittered below, and the night air was warm and fragrant with the scent of jasmine flowers. Her mind was racing with thoughts of her future, what it would mean to be a Lancaster, to carry the weight of a family legacy. What if she couldn't live up to the expectations? What if she wasn't strong enough to fit in? Her phone buzzed, and she picked it up to see a message from Robert, the restaurant manager. "You're not alone anymore, Jasmine. You never have been. Let me know when you're ready to talk about your future." She stared at the message for a long moment, the words sinking in. It wasn't just about the money or the family name. It was about finding her place, her purpose. And maybe, just maybe, she could build a future that didn't erase her past, but honored it. As she sat there, the breeze gently moving through the trees, Jasmine realized something important. She didn't have to choose between the woman she had been and the woman she could become. She could have both. She could carry her history with her, but she could also embrace a new life, a new beginning. And with that realization came a sense of peace, and her journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. And she wasn't alone anymore. The next morning, as she walked down the grand staircase of Margaret's mansion, a sense of purpose filled her chest. She had a family now. She had a future. And for the first time, she felt like she was home. The mansion was quiet at this early hour, the sun just beginning to rise, casting a soft glow through the large windows. Margaret was already up, standing by the kitchen island, a cup of coffee in her hand as she flipped through a stack of papers. She looked up when she heard Jasmine's footsteps and smiled warmly. "Good morning, Jasmine," Margaret said, her voice a comforting presence in the stillness of the house. "Sleep well?" Jasmine smiled, walking over to the kitchen counter and grabbing a mug for herself. "I did, actually. It feels strange, but in a good way, like I'm finally in the right place." Margaret chuckled softly. "I know that feeling. It's a strange mix of excitement and fear. But you'll find your way. But I'm here to help however I can." Jasmine's chest tightened at Margaret's words. She had already shown her so much kindness, and now she was starting to realize how much this woman was offering her. Not just a place in her life, but a future filled with opportunities, possibilities. She had always fought to make something of herself, but now there was more. There was hope. There was love. "I appreciate everything," Jasmine said quietly, her eyes meeting Margaret's. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Margaret set her cup down, her expression serious but filled with warmth. "You don't have to thank me, Jasmine. I'm just glad you're here. You deserve so much more than what you've been given. Now it's time for you to take what's rightfully yours." A shiver ran down Jasmine's spine as she thought about what Margaret had said. rightfully mine. The words echoed in her mind. She had always been told that she didn't deserve much, that she was just another girl who had been abandoned, left to figure it out alone. But now Margaret was telling her that she deserved to have it all. The question was, did she believe it? As they stood there in the warmth of the kitchen, the reality of it all began to sink in. Jasmine wasn't just a waitress anymore. She wasn't a girl living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to get by. She was part of something bigger. Now she had a family, a legacy, and with that came responsibility. A responsibility to honor the family that had taken her in and shown her a love she hadn't known she needed. "I've been thinking," Jasmine began, her voice tentative but firm. "I want to do something. I want to help others, like I've been helped. I want to make sure no one else has to go through what I did." Margaret raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And what do you have in mind?" Jasmine paused, and her thoughts swirling as she gathered her courage. "I want to start something. Maybe a foundation. Something to help kids who grew up like I did. Kids who don't have a family, who don't know where they belong. I want to give them a chance. I want to make sure they know they're not alone." Margaret's eyes softened with pride. "That's a beautiful idea, Jasmine. I'm proud of you, and I'll support you every step of the way." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell ringing. Margaret glanced toward the front door, then back at Jasmine. "I have a meeting this morning, but you're welcome to make yourself at home. There's a study down the hall if you want some quiet time. I'll be back soon." Jasmine nodded, still processing everything. "Thanks, Margaret. I think I'll take a walk outside. It's a nice day." As Margaret headed toward the door, Jasmine lingered in the kitchen for a moment longer, the weight of her words settling in. A foundation, as a chance to make a difference. She had always wanted to help people, to make an impact, but she never imagined it would start like this. She had spent her life surviving, fighting for scraps, but now she had a chance to thrive, to give back. Stepping outside, she was greeted by the warm embrace of the New Orleans sun, the air thick with the scent of blooming jasmine flowers. The sprawling garden in front of the mansion stretched out like a painting, once with fountains and manicured hedges leading toward a small pond. Jasmine couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over her. This was where she was meant to be, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally. It felt like everything was finally falling into place. As she walked toward the edge of the property, she saw a few workers tending to the flowers and plants, their chatter and laughter filling the air. They nodded politely as she passed, but Jasmine felt a sense of disconnection. These people, though friendly, were a part of a world she didn't fully understand yet, a world she had just started to step into. And as much as she wanted to embrace it, she couldn't help but feel like an outsider. But she was determined to change that. Margaret had given her a chance to build something for herself, and she wasn't going to squander it. She had a family now, a grandmother who loved her, and a future that was hers to create. It was up to her to decide what she would do with it. So she sat on one of the stone benches by the pond, her mind racing with possibilities. Could she really start a foundation? Could she really help kids who were struggling, just like she had? The thought both excited and terrified her, but she had always been someone who fought for what she wanted. And now she had something worth fighting for. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, seeing a message from Robert. "Jasmine, I know we haven't talked much lately, but I wanted to check in. If you ever want to talk about your future or need help getting things started, I'm here." Jasmine smiled softly at the message. Robert, the restaurant manager who had always been kind to her, had no idea how much that simple message meant. She hadn't known him well, but he had always treated her like more than just a waitress. He had seen something in her, just like Margaret had, And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to see it in herself too. With a deep breath, Jasmine stood up from the bench, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead was going to be long and filled with challenges, but she was ready. She wasn't alone anymore. She had family. She had a future. And for the first time in her life, Jasmine truly believed she deserved it. The sun had fully risen now, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold. Jasmine felt the warmth on her face as she walked back toward the mansion, her heart filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. At every step she took felt like she was leaving behind the uncertainty of her past and stepping into something far grander. The mansion stood before her like a symbol of that transformation, tall, immovable, a beacon of everything she had never known, but now had the chance to claim. Inside, the staff was already going about their business. It was a world that felt almost alien to her. The polished floors gleamed, and the soft hum of staff members quietly working in the background was an odd comfort. This was a world she could get used to, but it still felt like an illusion, a dream that was too good to be true. Jasmine found herself in the expansive kitchen, the large marble counters and high-end appliances only adding to the overwhelming sense of luxury. Margaret was there, talking on the phone with a business associate, her back turned to Jasmine as she looked over some paperwork. For a moment, and Jasmine stood silently at the entrance, unsure of what to do or say. Margaret finished her conversation, hanging up with a soft sigh, and turned to Jasmine with a warm smile. "Good morning. I trust you slept well?" Jasmine nodded, her smile faltering slightly. "Yes, I did. It's just a lot to take in." Margaret's eyes softened as she walked over to her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I understand, but take it one step at a time, Jasmine. Yet you don't have to figure everything out today. You're here now, and that's all that matters. You belong." For the first time, Jasmine allowed herself to believe those words. She had spent her whole life trying to find a place where she fit, where she wasn't just surviving, but actually living. And now, standing here in Margaret's grand kitchen, surrounded by the life she had never imagined, she could finally see a future where she wasn't invisible anymore. The next few days were a blur, while Margaret had arranged for Jasmine to meet with her lawyer, a sharp woman named Sarah Whitfield, who handled the family's legal matters. They sat together in a sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a view that made Jasmine's head spin. Sarah, with her cool demeanor and meticulous attention to detail, explained the steps they would take to make Jasmine's place in the family official. "You'll need to be legally adopted," Sarah explained, and her pen tapping lightly against the desk. "It's a formality, but it will ensure that your inheritance and any family obligations are properly addressed. Margaret wants to make sure that everything is in order for you, Jasmine. This isn't just about money. It's about securing your future, making sure you have every opportunity available." Jasmine listened intently, but her mind kept drifting back to her life before all of this, the foster homes, the rejection, or the feeling of always being an outsider. She had never known what it felt like to belong, and now, in this office, she was being told that she had a place in a family. It was a heady thought, one that she wasn't sure she was ready to accept just yet. "Do you have any questions?" Sarah asked, breaking her train of thought. Jasmine hesitated. "I guess I just don't know where to start. This whole thing, it feels too big. I mean, I was just a waitress a few days ago. Now I'm being told I'm part of a legacy, a family I never knew existed." Sarah's eyes softened as she leaned forward, her tone gentle. "It's a lot to process, Jasmine, but you don't have to take it all in at once. We'll go step by step, and if you need time to think, we can work at your pace." Jasmine nodded, grateful for Sarah's understanding. "Thank you. I need to figure out what all this means for me." I've spent so long just trying to survive. I don't know how to just live. I want to be part of something." Sarah smiled warmly. "You're already part of something. And we'll make sure you get everything you need to thrive." That afternoon, after her meeting with Sarah, Jasmine took a walk around the estate to clear her mind. The grounds were breathtaking. Lush gardens, winding paths, and a fountain that glimmered in the afternoon light. The scent of blooming flowers filled the air, and for a moment, Jasmine closed her eyes, breathing it all in. Oh, she had never imagined a life like this, one where she could stop and simply exist without the constant weight of worry. She wandered to a bench near the fountain, her thoughts swirling. She hadn't seen much of Margaret in the past few days, but she knew her grandmother was busy with meetings, phone calls, and the logistics of running a massive empire. Jasmine was grateful for the space, but she also felt a pang of longing, and she wanted to know more about the woman who had welcomed her into her life, about the family she had lost, and the life Margaret had built. She wanted to understand what it all meant to be part of this family. As she sat there, lost in thought, a soft voice interrupted her. "You seem deep in thought." Jasmine turned to see Margaret standing a few feet away, her arms crossed as she leaned against a stone pillar. The afternoon sun bathed her in golden light, and she looked every bit the powerful woman Jasmine had come to know. Yet there was something softer in her eyes now, something that made Jasmine feel as though she wasn't just the granddaughter of a billionaire, but someone who truly mattered. "I was just thinking," Jasmine said, a smile tugging at her lips. "It's all so overwhelming, but I think I'm starting to understand what you meant. This is my family. You're my family." Margaret smiled, her expression warm and genuine. "Oh, I'm glad to hear you say that. You've always been a part of this family, Jasmine. Now, we're just putting the pieces together." Jasmine looked down at her hands, the weight of the locket still heavy around her neck. "I don't know how to live up to this, to all of this." She gestured to the sprawling estate around them. "I've always been on my own. I don't know how to be a part of something so big." Margaret stepped closer, sitting beside her on the bench. "Well, it's not about living up to anything, Jasmine. It's about being yourself. That's all I've ever wanted for you. You don't have to prove anything. You're already everything you need to be." The words settled in her chest, a comforting weight that made Jasmine feel like maybe, just maybe, she could do this. She could be part of something bigger than herself. She could belong. "Thank you," Jasmine whispered, the words catching in her throat. "Well, for everything." Margaret rested a hand on her shoulder, her touch firm yet comforting. "You don't have to thank me. You're family now, and I'll always be here for you." Jasmine nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Later that evening, as the mansion came to life with the soft glow of evening lights, Jasmine sat alone in the study. The door creaked open, and she looked up to see Margaret standing there, holding something in her hand. "I thought you might want this," Margaret said, holding out a small box. Inside was a family heirloom, a delicate gold bracelet with intricate designs. Jasmine's eyes widened. "For me?" Margaret nodded. "A small piece of the family. A reminder that you're part of something real." Jasmine's heart swelled as she took the bracelet, the weight of it more than just metal. Yet it was a symbol of everything she had gained, the family, the love, the belonging. "Thank you," Jasmine whispered, her voice full of emotion. Margaret smiled, her eyes glistening. "You're welcome, Jasmine. You've always been worth it." Jasmine held the bracelet in her hands, feeling the cool metal warm against her skin. It was beautiful, intricate in design, and heavier than she expected. But more than the bracelet itself, It was the gesture. Margaret had just given her something precious, not something that signified her place in this world. For the first time, Jasmine felt like she wasn't just a part of someone's charity, someone's past, but a true member of a family. She didn't know how to fully express her gratitude, but she did know one thing for sure. This was her chance to start anew. This was her chance to make a difference, not only in her own life but in the lives of others. Margaret sat down beside her, her presence both comforting and commanding. But the quiet hum of the mansion seemed to fade into the background as they sat in the study, surrounded by bookshelves and antique furniture that told stories of generations. Jasmine, I know this has been overwhelming, but you don't have to figure everything out at once. We'll take this one step at a time. Jasmine nodded, feeling the weight of Margaret's words. I don't know where to begin, she admitted, her voice small. I've spent so long as trying to survive, making it day by day. And now it's like I'm supposed to be someone else. I don't know if I can be that person. Margaret placed a hand gently on Jasmine's arm, her grip firm but kind. You don't have to change who you are, Jasmine. I don't want you to. You've already proven to me how strong you are, how capable. But now, you can build something. You can build a life for yourself on your own terms. Jasmine looked down at the bracelet again, running her thumb over the delicate gold. Yes, it was a symbol of the past, but it was also a symbol of her future. She was no longer just surviving. She was living, and she was finally ready to embrace it. I've been thinking, Jasmine started, her voice steadying, about how I can give back, about how I can help other kids who grew up like I did, kids who don't have a family. I want to start a foundation, something to help those who are lost, just like I was. Margaret's eyes softened, a smile curling at the corners of her lips. Oh, that's a wonderful idea, and I will help you every step of the way. You don't have to do this alone. Jasmine felt a rush of emotion flood through her, but this time it was different. It wasn't fear or doubt, it was hope. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had the power to make a change. She had the opportunity to take her pain, her struggle, and turn it into something that could help others, and she wasn't doing it for herself. But she was doing it for the kids who hadn't yet found their place in the world, for the ones who felt invisible, just like she once did. A few days later, after hours of meetings with Margaret's legal and business advisors, Jasmine found herself standing in a conference room overlooking the city. The paperwork for the foundation was coming together, and the excitement in the air was palpable. But beneath that excitement, there was still a part of Jasmine that felt out of place. These were people who had spent their lives navigating high society, building empires, and making decisions that affected thousands. And then there was her, someone who had spent years just trying to make it to the next day. She glanced around the room, taking in the faces of the people who were helping her build this dream. Sarah Whitfield, Margaret's lawyer, sat at the head of the table, discussing legal logistics with another team member. Jasmine had grown to trust Sarah over the past few days. She was sharp, pragmatic, but also compassionate, something that surprised Jasmine. She had expected the lawyers and business people in Margaret's world to be cold, but Sarah had been different. She had listened to Jasmine's story, encouraged her to take her time with the foundation, and helped her feel like her voice mattered. There's still a lot of work to be done, Sarah said, snapping Jasmine out of her thoughts. But we're on the right track. You've got a solid foundation for the mission, and I've arranged a meeting with a few potential donors who might be interested in contributing. Jasmine smiled weakly, feeling a flutter of nerves. I can't believe it's actually happening. I've been dreaming of this for so long, but now it feels like I'm in over my head. You're doing great, Sarah reassured her. This is just the beginning. You're surrounded by people who want to help. Mom, and you've got a vision. That's what counts. Jasmine nodded, grateful for Sarah's support. She had never imagined that she would be here in this room, with people who believed in her. But part of her still felt like an outsider. She wasn't sure she belonged in this world, the world of billionaires and high-profile meetings. It was too unfamiliar, too intimidating. Yet, at the same time, she knew that she was capable. She had spent so many years proving that to herself. Yet the meeting lasted a few more hours, with discussions on logistics, financial planning, and outreach programs. Jasmine listened intently, trying to absorb everything. But her mind kept wandering back to the question that had been plaguing her since the moment Margaret had first opened the door to this new life. Who was she really? She had always known who she was in terms of survival, but now that she had the opportunity to build a future, she wasn't sure what that future looked like. She had a family now, a purpose. But could she truly embrace that purpose without losing herself in the process? As the meeting wrapped up, Margaret approached her with a smile. "How are you feeling?" Jasmine sighed, her gaze lingering out the window. "I'm excited, but also scared. This is all so new to me. I don't want to mess it up." Margaret placed a hand on her shoulder, a reassuring presence. "You won't mess it up. You're not alone in this. And remember, you don't have to do it all at once. One step at a time, Jasmine." Jasmine smiled, feeling the weight of Margaret's words settle in her chest. She wasn't alone. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she was finally on the right path. Later that evening, Jasmine walked through the gardens of Margaret's mansion, the cool night air wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. The sound of the fountain, gently splashing, filled the silence, and the soft glow of the garden lights created a peaceful ambiance. She felt at peace here, in a way she hadn't in years. As she walked, her thoughts drifted back to her childhood, the foster homes, the feeling of never truly belonging anywhere. But now, as she stood in this beautiful garden, a sense of belonging washed over her. It wasn't just about the mansion or the money. It was about the love she felt from Margaret, the support she had from the people around her. For the first time, Jasmine didn't feel like she was just surviving. She felt like she was living. She stopped at a bench by the fountain, sitting down and letting out a breath. Her journey had only just begun, but already it felt like the world had shifted. There was so much work to be done, so many hurdles to face. But she wasn't facing them alone anymore, and that thought, more than anything, filled her with hope. "I'm ready," she whispered to the night, her voice strong. "I'm ready to build this. For me, all for them, for everyone who needs to be seen." As the evening wore on, Jasmine lingered in the gardens, lost in the quiet, her thoughts intertwining with the soft rustling of leaves and the gentle splashing of water from the fountain. She could feel the pulse of the world around her, but she was no longer a passive observer. She had been given a chance, an opportunity to create something that mattered. And though she still felt the weight of everything she hadn't yet done, there was a shift in her heart. A new sense of determination was slowly taking root. The lights from the mansion shone warmly in the distance, a beacon guiding her toward the new life waiting inside. But tonight, Jasmine was alone with her thoughts, letting the calm wash over her before the world resumed its usual pace. As she stood up from the bench, her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she fumbled to pull it out. It was a message from Robert, the restaurant manager who had always been kind to her. She had texted him earlier, telling him about her plans for the foundation, and now he was checking in. "Jasmine, I'm really proud of you. You're doing something amazing. I've seen people work their whole lives to make a difference, and now you're doing it. Let me know if you need anything, seriously. I'm here for you." A smile tugged at Jasmine's lips as she read his words. Robert was one of the few people who had ever seen her as more than just a waitress. He had always treated her with respect, never looking down on her. It meant more than she could express. Thank you, Robert. I'll definitely need your support. And I'll never forget how much you've helped me. She sent the message and slipped her phone back into her pocket, feeling a renewed sense of gratitude. As much as she had been alone for most of her life, she now realized how many people were cheering for her, waiting to see her succeed. She wasn't just doing this for herself anymore. She was doing it for all the people who believed in her. People like Robert, and of course, Margaret. The next morning, Jasmine woke early, the sunlight spilling in through the large windows of Margaret's mansion. She had barely slept, her mind racing with ideas for the foundation and what she needed to do next. There was so much to figure out: donors, outreach programs, partnerships, but she felt more prepared than ever before. Margaret had told her not to rush, that she had time to think things through. But Jasmine wasn't used to taking her time. She was used to moving fast, to seizing opportunities when they came, because she never knew when they would disappear. But now, with Margaret's guidance, she felt like she had the luxury of patience. She stood up and walked to the window, gazing out over the city. The streets of New Orleans were already beginning to stir, cars moving slowly down the avenues, people heading to work. It was a city that never quite stopped, a place full of life and stories. But Jasmine's place in it had always felt like an afterthought, a mere blip on the radar. Now she was determined to change that. She wasn't just a part of the city's fabric. She was going to make her mark. She spent the morning working on the foundation's mission statement, drafting plans for programs that would support children in foster care, kids who were like she had once been, lost and forgotten. But as she sat at the desk, writing down her vision, she began to realize something important. Her work wasn't just about giving these children a chance. It was about giving them a voice, a chance to be seen, just as she had been seen by Margaret. It wasn't about charity. It was about empowerment. When she finished the draft, she sat back in her chair, her hands resting on the desk as she let out a slow breath. It was a lot of work, but it felt right. This was what she had been waiting for, what she had been fighting for all these years. She wasn't just building a foundation. She was building a legacy that would last long after she was gone. Just as she was lost in thought, a knock at the door interrupted her. Margaret entered with a warm smile, holding a steaming cup of coffee in her hand. "Good morning," Margaret said, and her voice calm and welcoming. "I thought you might need this." Jasmine smiled gratefully, accepting the coffee. "Thank you, Margaret. I've been up for a while, just thinking." Margaret took a seat across from her, studying the papers on Jasmine's desk. "I see you're making progress. How are you feeling?" "I'm excited," Jasmine replied, leaning back in her chair. "But also, I don't know, this is a big responsibility. I've never done anything like this before." Margaret's expression softened. "No one expects you to have all the answers right now. This is a journey, Jasmine. One step at a time. You've got the heart, and that's the most important thing." Jasmine nodded, feeling the weight of Margaret's words settle in her chest. It was true. She had the heart, the passion to make this work. She had something bigger than herself now, something that wasn't just about survival, but about purpose. "I think I'm ready to take the next step," Jasmine said, her voice filled with determination. Margaret smiled, standing up. "Then let's make it happen. I've already made some calls to people who might be interested in helping fund the foundation. We're going to need all the support we can get." Jasmine stood as well, feeling the excitement begin to build in her chest. "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll do just fine," Margaret said warmly. You have everything you need within you. All I'm doing is helping you see it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Jasmine worked alongside Margaret's team of advisors, gathering the necessary legal documents to set up the foundation, meeting with potential donors, and organizing meetings with key figures in the city who could help make her vision a reality. She had never felt so alive, so driven by something bigger than herself. But there were still moments when she felt a pang of doubt. Oh, could she really do this? Could she really make a difference? But every time she doubted herself, she thought of the kids in foster care, the ones who had never had a chance, the ones who had been forgotten. She thought of them, and the doubt faded. She wasn't doing this for her own recognition. She was doing it for them. To give them a voice, to give them a future. One afternoon, Margaret called her into her office. Jasmine walked in, her heart racing with curiosity. As Margaret was sitting at her desk, a stack of papers in front of her. But when she saw Jasmine, she put the papers down and smiled. "I've got some good news," Margaret said, her voice excited. "We've secured a large initial donation for the foundation. It's a big step forward." Jasmine's eyes widened. "What? Really?" Margaret nodded. "Yes, we've got some influential people backing us now. It's a start, but it's a significant one." Jasmine felt a rush of excitement flood through her. "Oh, this is it. This is really happening." Margaret stood up and walked over to Jasmine, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did this, Jasmine. You've got the vision, the passion, and the heart. This is your foundation, your legacy. I'm just here to support you." Jasmine felt a tear slip down her cheek, and she quickly wiped it away, embarrassed. "Thank you," she whispered. "I can't believe this is real." "It's real," Margaret said softly, her voice full of pride. "And it's only just beginning." As Jasmine stood there, staring out the window at the city below, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. This was only the beginning, and there would be challenges ahead. But for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face them. She wasn't just a girl who had survived. She was someone who was going to make a real difference in the world. And that thought, more than anything, filled her with hope. The next few days flew by in a blur of activity. Jasmine found herself knee-deep in paperwork, meetings, and calls. The foundation was starting to take shape, and people were beginning to notice. She was no longer just a face in a crowded restaurant. She was becoming a voice for the voiceless, an advocate for the forgotten children who had no one to turn to. But with every step forward, she felt the weight of the responsibility settle heavier on her shoulders. Every decision, every call, it was more than just a step toward a dream. It was a life-altering moment for the kids she was trying to help. She couldn't afford to make mistakes. The stakes were too high. One afternoon, Margaret invited Jasmine to a meeting with some of the foundation's early donors. The room was filled with powerful figures, businessmen, philanthropists, and lawyers, all gathered to discuss the future of Jasmine's cause. Margaret's presence in the room was commanding, and her every word respected by those around her. But Jasmine felt small and out of place as she sat at the table, surrounded by people whose lives were worlds apart from hers. Margaret, noticing her discomfort, gave her a reassuring smile. "Jasmine, you don't need to be nervous. These people believe in you. They believe in what we're doing here." Jasmine nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling of being an imposter in a room full of people who had everything she had never dreamed of. Well, she was a woman who had worked her way up from nothing, and now she was sitting at the table with billionaires, making deals that could change the lives of children across the country. It was overwhelming, to say the least. The meeting was a success, with pledges coming in from several influential individuals. By the end of the afternoon, Jasmine found herself standing outside the building, the crisp air biting at her skin as the evening approached. She leaned against the cold stone wall and letting out a long breath, trying to process everything. "You did great in there," Margaret said, stepping up beside her. "You're starting to make a real impact, and it's just the beginning." Jasmine smiled weakly, but felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "It's a lot to handle. I don't know if I'm ready for all this." Margaret looked at her, her expression softening. You don't have to be. No one expects you to have it all figured out right away. But you've got the heart for this, Jasmine, and that's all that matters. Jasmine nodded, trying to believe it. She had come so far in such a short time, but she still couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't truly belong in this world. Every time she took a step forward, it felt like there was something pulling her back, something reminding her of the girl she used to be, the girl who had nothing, who had always been overlooked. As she and Margaret made their way back to the mansion, Jasmine's mind wandered to her past, to the years spent in foster care, to the loneliness and the uncertainty. She had spent so much time fighting for survival that she hadn't allowed herself to dream of something more. And now, as she stood at the precipice of a new life, she wondered if she was strong enough to truly embrace it. Later that evening, after dinner with Margaret, Jasmine found herself alone in her room, sitting by the window, looking out at the glittering lights of the city below. But her thoughts drifted to the foundation, to the kids she was hoping to help, to the life she had left behind. She had made a promise to herself, to make a difference. But she wasn't sure how to begin. Her phone buzzed, and she looked down to see a message from Robert, the restaurant manager. Hey Jasmine, I know we don't talk much, but I just wanted to let you know I'm really proud of you. You've got something special. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Jasmine smiled softly at the message, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Robert had always been kind to her, even when she was just a waitress, struggling to make ends meet. It meant more than she could express to know that someone saw her, truly saw her, for who she was and what she was capable of. Thank you, Robert. Your support means the world to me. She hit send and put her phone down, staring out at the city once more. There was so much she wanted to do, so much she had yet to figure out. But with each step, with each moment of doubt, there was something else growing within her. A sense of purpose, a belief that she could do this. She could build something that mattered. The next morning, Jasmine woke up early, her mind already racing with ideas. She couldn't wait to get started on the next phase of the foundation. But first, there were some important calls to make. She needed to reach out to some of the potential partners she had met during the previous meetings. She was ready to take the next step, to start turning the vision into reality. She spent the morning on the phone with various people, making arrangements and setting up meetings. It was exhilarating, but also exhausting. She had never known a life like this, one where every decision felt so impactful, so important. By the time she finished, it was early afternoon, and she felt a sense of accomplishment. But as she sat back in her chair, she realized something. She wasn't just working for the kids anymore. She wasn't just working for her grandmother, or for the legacy of the Lancaster family. She was working for herself. She was building something that was hers, something that would stand long after she was gone. As she stood up to grab a glass of water, her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Sarah Whitfield, Margaret's lawyer. We've made significant progress with the legal aspects of the foundation. Now I'm meeting with a few key people tomorrow, but I think we're close to securing our first big donor. I'll keep you updated. Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. The pieces were falling into place, and everything was starting to move faster than she had anticipated. It was a thrilling feeling, but also one that brought with it a new set of challenges. The foundation was growing, and so was her role in it. That evening, as Jasmine sat in the grand dining room with Margaret, though she felt a sense of calm wash over her. They had just finished discussing some details about the foundation, and now they were enjoying a quiet dinner together. Margaret had always been the driving force behind the business, but now it seemed like they were both working toward a common goal. You know, Margaret said as she passed the wine, you've come a long way in a short time. You're really starting to make an impact. Jasmine smiled, but it was a tired smile. Well, she felt the weight of everything that had happened in the past few days, but she also felt the excitement of what was to come. I couldn't have done it without you, Margaret. You've given me a chance to do something bigger than myself. Margaret nodded, her eyes soft. You've always had the potential, Jasmine. I just helped you see it. You're not alone in this anymore. You've got a family now. And as Jasmine looked across the table at Margaret, she finally realized what that truly meant. And family wasn't just about blood. It was about support, love, and the willingness to fight for each other. And for the first time in her life, Jasmine felt like she had that. The dinner settled into a peaceful silence, the two women sharing quiet glances as the final course was cleared away. The clinking of silverware and distant chatter from the kitchen was the only sound that filled the air. Margaret, ever the composed matriarch, had that look on her face again, the one that spoke volumes without uttering a word. It was the same look she wore when she first welcomed Jasmine into her home, the one that said she was in control, that everything was going to be okay. Jasmine found herself leaning into that sense of calm, allowing it to ease the nervous energy that had been building up in her. "I've been thinking," Margaret said, breaking the silence. Her voice was low but steady, and as though she had already decided what she was about to say. "I want to give you the tools to truly make a difference, Jasmine. Not just with this foundation, but in the world. We've got the resources, the connections, and the influence. But what matters most is you." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Me?" "Yes," Margaret said, leaning forward slightly. "You've got the heart, the vision, but I think it's time we start thinking bigger. You've been helping kids in foster care, but why stop there? What if we could change the entire system? What if we could reform how children in the system are treated, how they're placed, how they're cared for?" Jasmine's breath caught in her throat. It was a huge idea. She had spent her life fighting for survival, and now she was being handed the opportunity to do something that could change everything. Not just for herself, but for so many others who had been through what she went through. "I don't know," Jasmine replied, her voice tentative. "That sounds like a huge undertaking. I don't even know where to start." Margaret smiled knowingly. "That's why I'm here. We can start by expanding the foundation's scope. We'll partner with other organizations, lobby for policy changes, and bring in experts to redesign the foster care system. But it'll take time, and it'll take effort. I'll be with you every step of the way, Jasmine. But I need to know, are you ready for this?" Jasmine sat back in her chair, feeling a surge of emotion rise within her. The reality of it hit her all at once. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything. For so long, she had been fighting to get by, fighting to make a life for herself. And now, with Margaret's support, she had the chance to fight for something much bigger. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady, her resolve growing with each word. "I've been waiting for something like this, and I know I can't do it alone. But with you, I think we can actually make a difference." Margaret's eyes softened, her smile more genuine than ever. "I knew you had it in you. Let's change the world, Jasmine." The following weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and planning. Margaret pulled every string she could, reaching out to influential figures in the government, private sector, and nonprofit world. Jasmine, for her part, threw herself into the foundation's work. She attended board meetings, spoke with experts, and began crafting a strategy for reform. It wasn't easy, but each small victory pushed her further toward the realization that this was the work she was meant to do. But as the foundation began to take shape, Jasmine started to notice something unsettling. People weren't always as supportive as they seemed. The deeper they got into the political side of things, the more opposition they faced. There were powerful people, politicians, wealthy business owners, and even some members of the foster care system who didn't want things to change. They wanted the system to stay as it was. It was profitable, and it kept certain people in power. Jasmine couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. She was fighting against an entire system, and it wasn't just a battle for policy change. It was a battle against the status quo, a battle against years of corruption, neglect, and indifference. The odds were stacked against her, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to take on such a monumental challenge. One evening, after a particularly difficult meeting with a donor who had backed out, Jasmine sat on the balcony of Margaret's mansion, staring out at the New Orleans skyline. The city sprawled beneath her, full of life and opportunity, but at that moment, it all felt so far out of reach. The foundation, the changes they were trying to make, felt like an impossible task. She was just one person. And the people she was up against were powerful, far more powerful than she had ever imagined. "Are you okay?" Margaret's voice interrupted her thoughts. Jasmine turned to see her standing in the doorway, a concerned expression on her face. Jasmine didn't respond immediately. Instead, she wiped a tear from her cheek, feeling the frustration and exhaustion bubbling up inside her. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I'm not sure I'm strong enough. There's so much standing in the way." Margaret walked over and sat beside her, her presence calming, steady. "Jasmine, I've been where you are. I've fought battles that seemed impossible. But the one thing I've learned is that you can't let the weight of the world crush you. You have to take it one step at a time." Jasmine looked at her, unsure. But what if that's not enough? What if it's all just too much? Margaret placed a hand on her shoulder, her grip firm. "Ma, you can't do everything at once. But you can do something. Start small, but make it count. The world will change, one person at a time, one policy at a time, and the people who are meant to be part of your journey will show up." Jasmine let out a shaky breath, feeling the weight of Margaret's words sink in. "I know you're right. I want to make sure I do this right. I don't want to let anyone down." Margaret smiled softly, her eyes glistening with pride. "You won't let anyone down. You're already doing something incredible. And you're not alone. You've got people who believe in you. You've got a family who's backing you." Jasmine nodded, wiping away another tear, feeling the pressure slowly start to ease. She wasn't alone. She had Margaret. She had the team at the foundation. And most importantly, she had herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path. It wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, obstacles, and people who would try to stop her. But she had the heart, the will, and the support she needed to keep going. "Thank you," Jasmine whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "For everything." Margaret squeezed her shoulder. "You don't need to thank me. We're in this together." And with that, Jasmine knew that she wasn't just building a foundation. She was building a future where every child, every person who had ever been forgotten, had the chance to be seen. Now, the next few weeks flew by, a blur of meetings, late-night brainstorming sessions, and phone calls that stretched long into the evening. Jasmine was immersed in the work of the foundation, figuring out the logistics of outreach programs, connecting with other organizations, and trying to make her vision a reality. She felt more alive than she ever had before. Every conversation, every connection, was a step closer to the life she had imagined. But it was also exhausting. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk going through some paperwork, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, expecting another email from one of the foundation's partners, but instead, it was a text from Robert. "I saw the article about the foundation. You're making waves, Jasmine. Proud of you. I hope you are not working yourself too hard." Jasmine smiled at the message. It was hard to believe how much had changed in such a short time. She had gone from a girl who felt invisible to someone people were starting to notice. It wasn't just about the money or the foundation's growth. It was the feeling of being seen, of having a purpose that extended beyond herself. She typed a quick response. "Thank you, Robert. I'm pushing myself, but it's worth it. I won't forget how much you've helped me get here." She hit send and leaned back in her chair, letting out a long breath. She was proud of the progress they had made, but the weight of it all was starting to settle in. She had set out to change the world, to create a future for kids like her. But now that the foundation was growing, the pressure was mounting. There were people who depended on her, expectations she had to meet, and a legacy she had to build. It was thrilling, yes, but also terrifying. Margaret entered the room, her presence a familiar comfort. "You look like you've been at this for hours," she said, her eyes softening as she looked at Jasmine. "How are you holding up?" Jasmine shook her head, the exhaustion in her body suddenly catching up with her. "It's a lot. I know this is what I've wanted, but I didn't realize how much responsibility it would be. It's not just about the kids anymore. There's so much I need to figure out." Margaret walked over and sat beside her. "Jasmine, you're doing exactly what you were meant to do. But it's okay to take a breath. Well, this isn't a race." Jasmine smiled, grateful for Margaret's steady presence. "I know. I guess I just don't want to mess it up. There's so much riding on this." Margaret placed a hand on hers, a gesture of reassurance. "You won't mess it up. Just remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together." For the first time in weeks, Jasmine allowed herself to relax. She hadn't realized how much she had been carrying on her shoulders until now. She was so focused on doing everything perfectly, on making sure the foundation succeeded, that she had forgotten to give herself a little grace. The next morning, they had a meeting with the board members of the foundation, a group of influential people who had been supporting the cause. The room was filled with polished suits and confident voices, but Jasmine held her own, speaking passionately about the mission and her vision for the future. She felt a surge of pride as she presented their plans for the first phase of the outreach program. And it was a dream coming to life, and the excitement in the room was palpable. But when the conversation turned to funding, Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. They had secured some initial donations, but there was still so much more to raise. The foundation was growing faster than she had anticipated, and the cost of expanding their programs was higher than she had expected. One of the board members, a well-dressed man in his early 50s, raised an eyebrow. "Jasmine, this is an ambitious project. Oh, but are you sure we're ready for this level of commitment? We've seen similar projects fail because they didn't have the necessary infrastructure in place. How can we ensure that this will work long-term?" Jasmine took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We're working on securing the necessary resources. But this foundation is about more than just money. It's about the people who believe in this cause. We have the passion, the vision, and the support to make this work. And I'm confident that we can create lasting change." The board member didn't seem convinced, but he nodded politely, and the meeting moved on. Jasmine felt the weight of the doubt settle in her chest, but she refused to let it show. She wasn't going to let anything stand in the way of the foundation's success. Not now. Not when they were so close. That evening, as Jasmine walked through the mansion, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. But it wasn't just the pressure of running the foundation. It was something else. She felt like there were forces beyond her control, forces that didn't want the foundation to succeed. There were people who had invested in keeping the status quo, who didn't want to see change. Her phone buzzed again, and she glanced at it. Another message from Robert. "Keep pushing, Jasmine. You've got this. And don't forget, I'm always here if you need someone to talk to." She smiled at the message, but the unease still lingered in her chest. She had spent so many years fighting to be seen, to be heard, that she couldn't let herself back down now, not when the foundation was just starting to take off. She sat down on the edge of the couch in the living room, her thoughts spinning. What was next? How could she build the foundation into something that could sustain itself? She needed to find a way to ensure its success, to prove the naysayers wrong, and most importantly, she needed to make sure that she didn't lose herself in the process. Margaret walked in a few minutes later, her face kind and understanding. "You're thinking too hard again," she said, sitting beside Jasmine. "You don't have to have all the answers right now." "I know," Jasmine replied, her voice tight with frustration. "I just feel like I'm running out of time. There's so much to do, and I don't know if I'm ready for all of it." Margaret placed a hand on her shoulder. "Jasmine, you've already done more than most people could ever dream of. You've built something from nothing, and you've got a team behind you. You're ready." Jasmine looked at Margaret, seeing the trust in her eyes. Margaret had always believed in her, even when she hadn't believed in herself, and that belief meant more than anything. "Thank you," Jasmine said quietly, feeling the weight lift slightly from her shoulders. "I just need to remember that." Margaret smiled, her eyes softening. "Oh, you don't need to do it all at once. Take it one day at a time. And remember, I'm here for you, always." Jasmine nodded, grateful for Margaret's unwavering support. For the first time in a while, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could do this. One step at a time. The next morning, Jasmine woke up early, determined to start the day with a clearer mind. She had a meeting scheduled with a potential donor, someone who had expressed interest in the foundation's mission, and she couldn't afford to let doubts hold her back. She spent the morning preparing, going over the foundation's financials and fine-tuning her pitch. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to stop now. She had a responsibility to the kids who needed her, and she would do whatever it took to ensure their future. As she headed out the door, she glanced at the mirror one last time. For the first time since everything had changed, she looked at herself with a sense of pride. Yet this was who she was now, a woman with a purpose, with a mission, with a future, and nothing was going to stop her from achieving it. The sun shone brightly over New Orleans as Jasmine made her way to the meeting. The city was waking up, the streets alive with activity. She could feel the pulse of it, the energy, and the possibility. It was a stark contrast to how she had felt just a few months ago, lost, uncertain, stuck in a routine that seemed to go nowhere. But now, she had a goal, and she had something bigger than herself to fight for. And the city felt like it was welcoming her into its fold, as if it knew she was finally ready to claim her place. The drive to the meeting was quiet, just the hum of the car's engine and the occasional passing car on the road. As she approached the towering office building where her meeting was scheduled, a wave of nervous energy hit her. She knew this was a crucial moment. This donor, this partnership, could mean the difference between success and failure for the foundation. The thought of all the children depending on her to make this work filled her chest with a tight, nervous excitement. Margaret's words echoed in her mind, one step at a time. But this step felt bigger than any other. She had already come so far, but now she was facing the real test, the moment when she would have to prove she belonged in this world of power, influence, and responsibility. Jasmine took a deep breath as she parked the car. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She wasn't just a girl from a broken past. She was someone who had the power to make a change. And today, she was going to prove it. The building's lobby was sleek and polished, the kind of place where success was measured in glass walls and expensive marble floors. She walked to the elevator, her heels clicking on the floor with every step, the nervousness creeping in again, and she could see the reflection of herself in the shiny surfaces around her, and for a moment, she couldn't quite believe she was here. She had spent so much time feeling invisible, like she didn't matter. But today, she was about to step into a room full of people who would be forced to see her, and that terrified her. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped out into the high-rise office suite. She was greeted by a receptionist, one who led her to a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city. Jasmine sat down at the table, her heart racing in her chest. She wiped her hands on her skirt, trying to steady her nerves. A few minutes later, the door opened and a man entered. He was tall, well-dressed, with sharp features and a confident stride. He extended his hand to her, a smile on his face. "Jasmine Brown," he said, his voice smooth and deep. "I've heard a lot about you. Oh, it's a pleasure to finally meet you." Jasmine shook his hand, trying to maintain her composure. "Thank you. I'm glad we could meet." The man smiled again, taking a seat across from her. "I've been following your foundation's progress. I'm impressed. You've already accomplished a lot in a short amount of time." Jasmine felt a spark of pride. "We've only just begun," she replied. "But I'm passionate about this cause. I believe we can make a real difference." The man leaned forward, his expression turning serious. "I'm all for philanthropy, but I'm also a businessman. I need to know what the foundation's plan is and how it will ensure long-term sustainability." Jasmine took a deep breath, the moment she had prepared for finally here. She opened the folder in front of her and began to speak, laying out the plans for the foundation's future. She talked about the outreach programs, the partnerships with other organizations, and the long-term goals of creating systemic change within the foster care system. She spoke with conviction, her voice steady as she outlined the impact they hoped to have. The man listened intently, his gaze never wavering from her. But as she finished, he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers together. "You make some good points," he said. "But this is a big ask. It's going to take a lot more than passion to make this work. It's going to take money, resources, and influence. You're asking for a lot of commitment." Jasmine's heart pounded in her chest. "I know it's a big ask, but I believe it's worth it. There are kids out there who have no one. They need someone to fight for them." The man nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "I respect your passion, Jasmine. But passion alone doesn't get things done. It takes people who can back you up. People who can bring their expertise to the table." Jasmine felt her confidence falter for a moment. She had been so sure of herself just a minute ago, but now she felt like she was being tested in a way she hadn't expected. She had the heart, but did she have what it took to convince this man, to get him to believe in her vision? "I understand that," she said, her voice stronger now. "But the most important thing is that I'm committed. I'm not going to give up on this. I've seen what happens when kids don't have a chance. I've lived it." There was a long silence as the man studied her, and his eyes narrowing slightly. Finally, he leaned forward again, his hand resting on the table. "All right, Jasmine, I'll give you this. You're persistent, and you've got heart. I can see that. But I need to know you have a plan, a solid plan." Jasmine nodded, her confidence returning. "I do. I've put in the work. I have the backing of people who believe in this. We're going to build something that lasts." The man studied her for another moment before offering a slight smile. "I like your drive, Jasmine. You've got potential, but you need more than potential to make this work." He paused for a moment before continuing. "I'll give you a chance. I'll invest in your foundation. But I need you to prove that you can deliver. This isn't just about giving away money. It's about making a real impact. Show me you can do that, and we'll talk about bigger commitments." Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment she had been working toward. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I won't let you down." The man stood up, extending his hand once more. "We'll see, Jasmine. We'll see." As Jasmine left the meeting, her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and fear. She had taken the first step toward securing the future of the foundation, but she knew there was so much more to do. The challenges were just beginning, but she wasn't backing down now. She had made it this far, and she wasn't going to let anyone, anything, stand in her way. As she walked down the street, the weight of the meeting settled in. She was building something real now, and the stakes were higher than ever. But for the first time, she felt ready for whatever came next. The day was warm, the sun hanging high in the sky above the bustling city streets. Jasmine walked briskly, her steps purposeful, as if each one was carrying her toward a new chapter. She had just secured her first major commitment for the foundation, and the adrenaline still pulsed through her veins. But beneath that excitement, there was a heavy weight, a responsibility she had never known. It wasn't just about money or donors. It was about children. About the kids who had been lost in the system, kids who had never had a voice. And now, she was their voice. Every decision she made, every action she took, had the power to change their lives. But that kind of power came with its own set of challenges. The foundation was growing faster than she could have imagined, and with it, the pressure to succeed. She walked past familiar streets, the ones she used to wander alone, the ones that had always felt like home but never truly belonged to her. Now, as she walked with purpose, she saw them differently. The city was no longer just a backdrop to her struggles. It was part of the story she was writing, a story where she was no longer a bystander, but the protagonist. Jasmine paused at a small coffee shop on the corner, needing a moment to collect her thoughts. She stepped inside, greeted by the warm scent of freshly brewed coffee. The shop was cozy, the kind of place where regulars lingered over their drinks, chatting with the barista. She ordered a cappuccino, her hands still trembling slightly from the rush of the meeting. As she waited for her drink, her mind began to drift back to the enormity of the task ahead. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "Oh, Jasmine Brown?" Jasmine turned to find a familiar face, Sarah Whitfield, Margaret's lawyer and trusted advisor. Sarah had been a constant presence in the past few weeks, guiding Jasmine through the maze of legalities involved in setting up the foundation. The lawyer was dressed sharply, as always, in a tailored suit, and her posture was confident. "Sarah," Jasmine said with a smile, grateful for the friendly face. "What are you doing here?" "I was just in the neighborhood for a few meetings," Sarah said, giving Jasmine a warm smile. "I heard about the meeting this morning. How did it go?" Jasmine took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the question. "It went well, better than I expected. But I don't know. I'm still wrapping my head around it all. It's a lot to take on." Sarah nodded understandingly. "I get it. You're doing something incredible, but it's not easy. Well, you've got a lot of people watching you now, waiting to see if you can deliver. But I know you can. You've got the vision, Jasmine. That's the most important part." Jasmine smiled but felt a pang of doubt. "I know I'm doing this for the right reasons, but sometimes it just feels like it's all too big. I'm only one person, Sarah. I don't know if I can live up to this." "You're not alone," Sarah said gently, her voice steady. "You've got Margaret behind you, and you've got the team you've built. You don't have to do it all by yourself. It's okay to lean on people when you need to." The reassuring words made Jasmine feel a little lighter, but the pressure still weighed on her. She had to make this work, not just for herself, but for all the kids who depended on her. There was no room for failure. After their brief conversation, Sarah gave her a business card. "If you ever need to talk, or if you're unsure about any legal matters, don't hesitate to call me." Jasmine took the card with a nod. "Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate all the support." As Sarah walked out of the coffee shop, Jasmine's thoughts began to swirl again. The city around her felt both exhilarating and overwhelming, like a giant puzzle that she was trying to piece together without the full picture. She had come so far, and yet the hardest parts were still ahead. As it wasn't just about the foundation's success. It was about proving to herself that she belonged in this world, that she wasn't just some girl from a broken past. She had to show everyone, most importantly, herself, that she could do this, that she deserved to be here. The days passed in a blur of emails, meetings, and more phone calls. Jasmine worked tirelessly, poring over every detail, fine-tuning the foundation's strategy. She was determined to get it right. The first big donor meeting had been a success, but now came the hard part, sustaining that momentum. She needed more donors, more support, and more connections to make the foundation's vision a reality. The pressure to succeed was relentless. Jasmine spent late nights in the office, her mind racing with thoughts of what came next. But despite the weight of the responsibility, there was a flicker of something inside her, a spark of purpose. She wasn't just building a foundation. She was building a movement, a chance for children like her to be seen, to be heard. And that kept her going, even when the exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. One evening, after another exhausting day, Jasmine sat alone in the study, staring out at the skyline. The room was quiet, and she let the stillness of the moment wash over her. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. "Jasmine?" Margaret's voice called from the other side. "Come in," Jasmine called, her voice soft but tired. Margaret stepped in, her expression warm but thoughtful. "I wanted to check on you. You've been working nonstop, and I just want to make sure you're taking care of yourself." Jasmine smiled weakly, feeling the concern in Margaret's voice. "I'm okay. Just a lot to think about." Margaret walked over and sat down beside her, her presence always calming. "I know you're carrying a heavy load, but you can't do it all at once, Jasmine. It's okay to take a break. To step back and breathe for a moment." "I know," Jasmine replied, her voice low. "It's just hard. I want this to work so badly. There's so much riding on it." Margaret reached over and gently placed her hand on Jasmine's. "Jasmine, you're doing amazing things, and you're not doing this alone. You have a whole team behind you, and you've got me. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. We'll get through it, one step at a time." For the first time in a while, Jasmine let herself relax, leaning into Margaret's words. She was right. She didn't have to do this alone. And with that realization came a small but powerful wave of relief. The journey was just beginning, and the road ahead would be tough, but she wasn't facing it by herself. She had a family now. She had a future. And nothing at all, was going to stop her from making that future a reality. If this story inspired you, let us know what you think. Drop a 0 in the comments if you're ready to take the next step toward your own dreams, or a 1 if you believe in the power of family and fighting for what's right. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories. We've got so much more coming, and you won't want to miss what's next. Stay tuned and keep believing in your journey.